All right. Morning. I mean, it is for now. I'm going to drag you guys down here in a little bit. We're talking about morale today. But first, our theme for this year is the heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. Proverbs 16:9. Again, we make plans, plans change, and God is the one who establishes our steps. We've been talking about this cycle of moving people from loving neighbors, reaching into the lives of people who are our neighbors all around us, getting to know them, getting to love them, getting them to love God, bringing them to worship, showing them our love for God, demonstrating our love for God. And then finally, moving people to serving others, getting people to move beyond the pews to getting out there and getting into the lives of people and serving them. As I said, we're talking about morale today, and if you're not an anxious person, you probably will be in the next few minutes when you see some of the stuff that's going on around. The only reason I want to do this is to demonstrate and show that there's a lot of stuff, a lot of compound stuff going on in the lives of people all around us. And I think more so in the last few years than we ever have before. This article just posted a couple days ago. U.S. national debt exceeds $30 trillion for the first time. That's almost a fictitious number because it's just so massive and so huge. All the articles that I've read said that there's no denying that this is going to be generational. This is going to be felt by our kids. That's kind of been the narrative ever since I was a kid. I can remember people like, we're going to be paying for this forever. Your kids' kids are going to be paying for this. This is now, I think all economists are saying this is going to be paid for and felt through inflation and all kinds of other things for generations. And there's no slowing this down. Another article that I saw just this past week, in the wake of the Omicron wave, single parents are drowning. The article was actually quite depressing to read. There was no happy ending to it. It just talked about how single parents are really struggling, and it kind of highlighted a couple moms that they're trying to find childcare for their kids. Natalie works in the childcare industry, and it's so up and down, and centers closing, lack of employees, quarantining constantly, kids quarantining, workers, employees quarantining. It's so hard. There's no consistency. And so it's hard for parents to plan to go to work when they don't have child care for their kids. And so some of these moms who have to work, I say moms, it's dads too, they have to work. A lot of them don't have the option to work from home, and so it begs the question, what do we do with our kids? And that just brings a whole nother level of anxiety. This article, Biden came to unite, but poll shows U.S. is now more divided than ever. This was not a partisan article. It's not pinning the blame on one president or the other. It's just to say that, in this time right now, this nation is truly, genuinely, it's divided. It is very, very divided. And I think we can feel that as we look out at some friends and family, and they're just like these lines in the sand that are being drawn, and friendships are being broken over all the stuff that's going on, both politically and just the stress of life. Another article, I think it's no secret that we're all feeling the weight now of inflation. I know on our incomes, we don't live lavishly, we budget really well, but we are feeling the squeeze of inflation. There's no question about it. This article in the Washington Post, December prices are 7%, rise 7% compared with a year ago as 2021 inflation reaches highest in 40 years. I think of all the people who, it's not a judgment on them, but a lot of people just because of their not great incomes, they genuinely live paycheck to paycheck with not a whole lot of wiggle room. This puts a lot of people in a very, very bad bind. Another article, here's why grocery stores are struggling to stock their empty shelves. This picture, I think, is pretty telling, and this is going on all over the place. Natalie accidentally, she was doing the store pickup at Walmart for groceries, and didn't realize she had the wrong store selected. It was actually the Walmart in Bedford. And she was like, there's literally nothing on my list. There are about 5 items on my entire grocery list that is available at the store. And like panic started to set in with both of us a little bit. And I was like, well, you know, in my mind, I'm like, well, I'll just go grab my gun and we'll go poaching, you know. We'll find food, honey. But then, you know, she changed it to Somerset, and we live in an area where we're very blessed. We have food for the most part in our grocery stores, but all over the nation right now, grocery stores are empty. And I know from talking to people. I was in a Bible study with somebody who's online with us right now this past week, and she said, Jimmy, I appreciate what you do. I love that you preach. I love that you're doing this, but will you please go back to trucking? Because she said, I am so worried our grocery stores are empty here where I live. Empty. There is a major shortage of truck drivers, and this is causing these kinds of issues. And then this article, morale is at an all-time low. Police leaders, officers speak out in NBC News special. This is all over the country. This is affecting every police department. I just spoke this past week to somebody who works for a government agency in law enforcement, and he said, Jimmy, I've been here almost 30 years, and he said, I've never felt morale this low. And I didn't bring it up. He said, it is absolutely depressing. And he said, the turnover rate right now, he said, we've never experienced turnover like this ever before. And he said, that means that very few new people are coming in, and when they do, these new people are quitting. They just can't handle it. And people are going into early retirement. And he said, it's really, really, really bad. Police departments are absolutely short-staffed. They're underfunded. They're overstressed. Crime rates are increasing. You get the picture. Morale is pretty bad, not just in police departments, but all over the place. Our story today is when Joab rebukes David. You remember David? You remember when he was this young, vigorous person? He was like, yeah, I'm going to go in there. I'm going to kill that Philistine. And they're like, yeah, go home, little boy. Shepherd the sheep. We've got this. And David comes back and he says, well, I go out in these fields and I kill bears with my bare hands. I defend the sheep. When a wolf comes, when a bear comes, I kill it with my bare hands. You remember that, David? Well, that David was just a shell of his former self, because his son Absalom had pushed David literally out of Jerusalem to where David is under the cover of these soldiers that are with him, and they sneak him away with his tail between his legs. They cross the Jordan, and David is now in hiding because Absalom, his son, had kind of gone completely rogue and made himself king in place of David. And it was a complete disaster. David was shown weakness like he had never shown before. Absalom was absolutely wanting to annihilate his dad and everybody that had anything to do with King David. And so the morale was really, really, really low. And I'm going to pick up a few verses before where Jacob read. This is 2 Samuel chapter 19, starting verse 1. It was told Joab, behold, the king is weeping and mourning for Absalom. Absalom had been killed at the command of Joab. Joab, they saw an opportunity. He said, look, if we don't wipe him out right now, we're going to be goners. Absalom was killed, and so Joab was told, the king, David, is weeping and mourning for his son Absalom. So the victory that day was turned into mourning for all the people, for the people heard that day, the king is grieving for his son. And the people stole into the city that day as people steal in, who are ashamed when they flee in battle. I mean, this is the biggest embarrassment for David and the people. The king covered his face, and the king cried with a loud voice, "Oh, my son Absalom! Oh, Absalom, my son, my son!" And here's where Jacob picked up when he read this morning. Then Joab came into the house to the king and said, "You have today covered with shame the faces of all your servants, who have this day saved your life and the lives of your sons and your daughters and the lives of your wives and your concubines, because you love those who hate you, and you hate those who love you. For you have made it clear today that commanders and servants are nothing to you. For today I know that if Absalom were alive and all of us were dead today, then you would be pleased. Now therefore arise, go out, and speak kindly to your servants. For I swear by the Lord, if you do not go, not a man will stay with you this night. And this will be worse for you than all the evil that has come upon you from your youth until now." You see, David needed to be rebuked. And I look around at the low morale that's plaguing society, it's plaguing churches, it's plaguing all kinds of people. And I look around and I kind of like Joab, I'm like, man, people don't need leaders to side with evil people and with the enemy and people who've caused all kinds of harm. What they need is kindness. They need to show kindness to their own people, to people within the congregations. They need kindness. They need leadership. Guys, it's breathtaking. The number of churches that are closing their doors and the number of churches where its leaders are retaliating against the people because people are fleeing the church. And in my mind, I'm like, that's a strange way to get people back. That you yell and shout at them, people who are genuinely hurting. And of course, there's always going to be a percentage of people, they just leave because, whatever, it's convenient or whatever. But I look around at what's happening, I look at these news stories, I talk to people, and I feel the anxiety that people are feeling. Our lives have been dramatically changed over the course of the last few years, and people are feeling the weight of that. And much like these people who are with David, I think it was the biggest slap in the face for them to see David crying over his son, who is an absolute moron. He was so evil and so twisted and so power hungry and so arrogant, so full of pride. And when David fell down, he was saying, "Oh my goodness, my son, why couldn't it have been me?" It was such a slap in the face to the people who defended David, who wanted him to get back on the throne that was rightfully his. I'm going to pick up and read a couple more verses here. Verse 8, "Then the king arose and took his seat in the gate. And the people were all told, 'Behold, the king is sitting in the gate.' And all the people before the king. Now Israel had fled, every man to his own home. And all the people were arguing throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, 'The king delivered us from the hand of our enemies and saved us from the hand of the Philistines. And now he was fled out of the land from Absalom.'" You see, the people were arguing because they didn't have their king. The David they once knew was in hiding. And the people were starting to fight. They felt the anxiety. They were fighting amongst each other. "But Absalom, who we anointed over us, is dead in battle. Now therefore, why do you say nothing about bringing the king back?" And King David sent his message to Zadok and Abiathar, the priests, "Say to the elders of Judah, why should you be the last to bring the king back to his house when the word of all Israel has come to the king? You are my brothers, you are my bone and my flesh. Why then should you be the last to bring back the king? And say to Amasa, are you not my bone and my flesh? God do so to me and more also,
if you are not commander of my army from now on in place of Joab. And he swayed the heart of all the men of Judah as one man, so that they sent word to the king, return both you and all your servants. And so the king came back to the Jordan, and Judah came to Gilgal to meet the king and to bring the king over to Jordan. This story doesn't end here. It's like this series of disasters. It's like David making all these radically insane decisions. And he started to spiral, and eventually David kind of woke up, and he's like, you know what, like the people really do need a king. But the damage was done. And eventually, I think things turned around, and morale, at least for a season, morale was boosted. But you see how quickly morale just goes in the gutter. And if we're not careful as Christians, as people of God, if we get caught up in all these arguments, and we get caught up in fighting with people, and we get caught up in partisan politics and fighting with each other, and we just have to get our opinion out there. If we get caught up in that, we're going to look no different than what Israel looked like here. And I think it's so important for us now, as we talk about making plans, as we talk about moving through 2022. We have such an opportunity to be a light in this community. I look around at some of the other churches right here in our own town, and I see churches that are right here in our town. They're fighting with each other. Or they're just beaten down. They're discouraged. I see churches giving up. I see churches making plans to close doors. And I also see other churches that are boosting the morale of people, and those churches are actually thriving right here in this town. They have a good attitude. They're encouraging people. They're saying, God is with us, and we can make it through this, whatever it looks like. None of us know what the future is going to look like. But we know if we make plans, if we stick together, if we stay united, God will direct our steps. He really will. So I just want to encourage you today, as you look around and you bump into people at the grocery store, you bump into people wherever, at work, when you see people who are beaten down, when their morale is low, give them a boost. Encourage them. Let them know that God is with them. And show them kindness. The message is yours. If anybody has not yet put Christ on in baptism, we invite you to come up. Or if you have any prayer needs, you can come up as well as we all stand and sing this song together.